The first thing I saw when I walked into that ballroom was the vendor table, round, wobbling, tucked next to the kitchen door. That's where they had me, behind the cake display and in front of a tray of wilting lettuce wraps. My name's Ethan. I'm 35 years old. I live in Jersey City, and I've been the backbone of my family's company since before my younger brother knew how to balance a budget. The room was packed with gold chairs, hanging orchids, and people clinking champagne glasses like they'd built the business themselves. I sat in a folding chair, the kind you rent for outdoor funerals, trying to keep my suit from brushing the floor. I paid for that suit, not that anyone asked. The head table was lit like a theater stage. Kyle sat grinning next to his bride, Erica, the girl who once asked if I did anything real for the company. Then her voice cut through the music, loud enough that I knew it wasn't by accident. He doesn't deserve anything. Let him sit with the help. She didn't whisper. She laughed, waved her champagne, and some of her bridesmaids giggled like it was a roast. My father checked his Rolex. My mother suddenly became fascinated with her water glass. Not one person stood up for me. Quick note, before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. I sat back, jaw tight, watching Erica stand for her toast. The photographer moved to get a better shot. To family, she said, grinning like she owned the world, and to the future of Whitmore Construction. Strong hands, bold leadership, and no dead weight dragging us down. More laughs, applause. Someone at another table banged a glass with a fork. I looked down at my plate. Nothing but half a sandwich, soggy from sitting out too long. They gave me vendor food. What none of them knew, what nobody in that ballroom had even bothered to ask, was that for the past 5 years, I'd been quietly building something they never saw coming. 3 companies, all essential to Whitmore Construction's survival, all under my control. And in that moment, while Erica raised her glass and kissed Kyle's cheek like she'd just won, I pulled out my phone, opened a preset message I'd kept in drafts for months, and hovered my thumb over the send button. 3 words. That's all it would take. Cancel all contracts. I didn't hit send, not yet. Instead, I slid my phone back in my pocket and let the clapping roll over me like static. That morning started at the kitchen counter in my parents' house. The same one I grew up in, same chipped tile, same rusted toaster. I'd barely taken a sip of coffee when my mother walked in and dropped a small envelope in front of me. "Dry cleaning for Kyle's tux," she said, not even looking up from her phone. "You'll pass the place on your way out, right?" She said it like I was the family errand boy. No, good morning, no, thanks for flying in. Just another task. I didn't move. I stared at her, waiting. She didn't flinch. "And Ethan," she added, "please don't make today about you. It's Erica's big moment." That hit harder than I expected. I gave her a short nod and folded the envelope in half, tossed it in my coat pocket without a word. They still thought I was the spare. What she didn't know, what none of them bothered to notice, was that just before coming over, I'd signed the final paperwork on a 7-figure capital injection to keep Whitmore Construction from defaulting on payroll. It was clean, tied through a holding firm out of Chicago, with no visible links to me. The company name on the documents was Benton Hill Resources, one of the shells I'd built and buried under 3 layers of ownership. Nobody in the office had a clue who Benton Hill was. They just knew we suddenly had enough money to make it through Q4. And it wasn't the first time. Every major client renewal in the last 3 years had come through me. Not Kyle, not my father, me. I made the calls, I fixed the invoices, I flew across the country to patch up contracts Kyle forgot existed. And every time I pulled us back from the edge, they acted like it was just luck. After breakfast, Kyle found me in the den, flipping through the Wall Street Journal. "Yo," he said, all smug. "Got a couple documents for you to review." He dropped a thick folder in my lap, like I worked for him. I looked at the title, Preliminary Merger Agreement, Whitmore Construction, Purse Pon Kingston Holdings. That was Erica's father's company. "I just need your signature," Kyle said. "Legal formality. You're on the books, so..." I started flipping pages while he hovered over me. He was nervous, but trying not to show it. The kind of fake chill he used to pull in high school when he knew he was about to get caught. "I already had legal skim through it," he added. "It's all standard." That was his tell. Standard meant he didn't understand it. I found the clause on page 42, one line buried in legal jargon. Upon completion of the acquisition, Class C voting shares will be retired, subject to performance review by the new board. Class C. That was me. I looked up at him, calm. You review this yourself? I asked. He shrugged. I mean, Erica's dad knows what he's doing. This is how companies scale. I leaned back and tossed the folder on the coffee table. Sure, I said. I'll take a deeper look. What Kyle didn't know, or forgot, was that 3 weeks ago, Erica had used my parents' desktop to check her email and forgot to log out. I wasn't snooping. I was literally opening a document for my mother when it popped up. An email titled Phase Out Strategy, Post-Merger, Internal Only. I read every word. They were going to cut me out completely. Erica and her dad had drafted a transition plan to move Kyle into full control within 6 months. I'd get a generous exit, that was the term they used, and be pushed out before the next board meeting. Kyle hadn't written any of it, but his name was all over the plan. Sign-off approvals, meeting invites, his initials at the bottom of the contract timeline. That folder in my lap wasn't a request. It was the knife. I stood up and handed it back. Leave it here. I'll go through it later, I said. He gave me a tight smile and clapped my shoulder. Thanks, man. I knew you'd be cool about it. Cool? That's what I was to him. Background noise. A signature. The quiet brother who wouldn't cause a scene. I walked out to my car, tossed the folder in the back seat, and pulled out my phone. Logged into the secure drive, double-checked the capital injection records, reviewed the client-side backup plans. The meeting was in the boardroom upstairs. Same cheap art on the walls, same coffee machine that spat out sludge. I got there 5 minutes early like always, but when I walked in, I stopped cold. Erica was already sitting in my chair, not just at the table, in my exact seat, right-hand side of the head spot, the one I'd claimed years ago when I started running ops. She was setting up her laptop, flipping through notes like she owned the place. I looked at my father. He didn't even blink. Oh, he said, clearing his throat. Erica's going to present something today. Better lighting on that side. You don't mind, do you? He didn't wait for an answer. He just picked up my stack of reports and moved them down to a side counter by the windows. No one looked at me, not even Kyle. I walked over to the side like I worked in IT, set my materials down, and kept my mouth shut. For now. Kyle stood up first and started the meeting, reading off a printout of the numbers I'd prepared. Q2 margins were, healthy, he said. We saw like a 12% bump in procurement efficiency. He butchered the phrasing, misread a few acronyms, didn't understand half of what he was saying, but Erica clapped when he finished. That's what leadership looks like, she said. I nearly laughed. Then she stood and started her own pitch, a slideshow on post-merger streamlining. She talked fast, didn't leave room for questions, and kept using buzzwords like synergy and strategic realignment. It was mostly fluff, but one thing was clear. She was drawing a new org chart, and I wasn't in it. At one point, she turned to me and said, "Ethan, could you take notes? We'll want to follow up on action items." I didn't answer. I just opened a blank notebook and pretended to write. Meanwhile, Kyle nodded like a bobblehead, soaking up the attention. Erica passed out handouts near the end. I watched as Dad leaned in and whispered something to her. She laughed like they were in on a joke I wasn't invited to. While they wrapped up, I slipped toward the end of the table to grab another pen and caught a glimpse of an unmarked folder in her open briefcase. Post-merger staffing recommendations. She hadn't even closed it. I slid it into my own stack without blinking. Nobody noticed. Nobody ever did. I left the meeting without saying a word, drove straight past my apartment, and headed for the edge of town, to the storage unit I had been renting under a fake name for almost 4 years. Unit B12. Looked like any other storage locker. Inside, different story. 1 desk, 2 monitors, backup hard drives, a whiteboard covered in diagrams, timelines, and contract maps. I had everything wired through a private server with bank-level encryption. That unit had more firepower than their whole main office. I dropped the file on the desk and opened it. There it was, plain as day. A list of proposed terminations and restructuring post-acquisition. My name? Right at the top. Underlined. Exit to be executed within 30 days of merger signing. Payout optional. NDA required. Optional payout. They weren't just planning to get rid of me. They were planning to do it cheap. I sat down, powered up the system, and started pulling together the kill switch plan I'd been building in pieces since the day Erica first came sniffing around the boardroom. Vendor control documents, contingency scripts, silent contract exit clauses. I'd been collecting every point of leverage and storing them here, off-grid and offline. Now it was time to fuse them into one trigger. By midnight, the kill switch program was ready. One button, one text, one command. I ran the kill switch program one last time, double-checking every line of code and every embedded trigger. It was airtight, legal, clean, irreversible. They had no idea how far back this really went. It started 5 years ago, when Kyle was still calling me little bro, even though I'm older and knew twice as much about how the business ran. That was around the time Dad stopped taking my input seriously and started acting like Kyle was next in line just because he could smile through a pitch deck. So I built my own ladder. Each time a vendor contract came up for renewal, I made sure Kyle got there first. I let him think he was cutting great deals. He didn't read anything, just skimmed the headlines and signed. That's how I got them. First the equipment leasing, then the logistics, then IT, then fleet fuel. Over 5 years, I secured controlling stakes in 7 companies Whitmore Construction couldn't operate without. They never noticed, because to them, I was just the guy who handled annoying paperwork, the guy who didn't get the big picture. I got it. All right, I drew it. The last piece of the puzzle wasn't operational. It was financial. I needed leverage from the debt side, and I knew exactly who to call. Margaret Whitmore hadn't been invited to a family dinner since I was in middle school. Dad called her the mistake, like she was some stain on the family record. She went from black sheep to financial strategist for one of the sharpest capital advisory firms in New York. I tracked her down through a former contact and sent her a single message. Let's talk. I have something he can't ignore. She replied in 10 minutes, told me to meet her at a diner outside Newark, halfway between us. She was already there when I arrived. Corner booth, black coffee, pinstripe suit. She didn't smile. Nice tie, she said. Still trying to impress the man who never sees you? I slid into the booth. Not anymore. She raised an eyebrow but didn't ask. Just opened her laptop and showed me a list of creditors. You want access, she said. You need an in. Good news is, I'm the one advising the fund holding a third of Whitmore's revolving debt. And if I want to buy in, you do it through our distressed asset division, quietly. No headlines, no trail. I nodded. I'll match whatever the current floor is. Add a premium if I get board influence. She leaned back, arms crossed. And what do I get? I didn't blink. Front row seat when it all collapses. That made her smile. You're colder than your old man, she said. And twice as smart. Smart enough to stay quiet, I said. We shook on it. No signatures, just a verbal deal. Old school. A week later, I got confirmation through one of Ironwood's dummy companies. Margaret had moved the debt block into our hands. We now owned the noose around Whitmore Construction's neck. It was all set. I had them locked from every angle. Operations, vendors, tech, logistics, debt. That night, I walked back into the storage unit, poured myself a scotch, and taped the post-merger folder to the wall beside a single word written in thick black Sharpie, checkmate. 2 days later, I was halfway through a bourbon and reviewing vendor triggers when I heard banging on my door. Not knocking, banging. Repeated, sloppy, almost rhythmic. I checked the time. 1:04 a.m. When I opened the door, Kyle stumbled in, reeked of whiskey and cologne. Tie loosened, shirt untucked, eyes glassy. Ethan, he slurred, dragging out my name like it weighed something. Man, you weren't answering your phone. That's because it's 1 a.m. He swayed into the living room and dropped onto my couch like a sack of bricks. Then he started digging in his coat pocket. I brought it, he said, pulling out a wrinkled folder. The merger docs. We just need your John Hancock and then we're all set. I didn't move. You showed up here at 1 a.m. drunk with legal paperwork? It's a formality, he said, waving a hand. Just need all the shareholders squared away before tomorrow. I mean, you still technically count, right? I sat across from him, hands clasped. What happens to my shares once I sign? He blinked, caught off guard. It's just structure stuff. You'd still be part of it. I mean, technically. You always handle the boring stuff. Then he leaned forward and grabbed my hand. I'm serious, bro. You're good at that. You're good at following directions. That right there, that was the moment I knew he never saw me any different. I was still the kid with the broken model train he used to boss around in the garage. "You trust me, right?" he asked. I looked him in the eye. "Always did." He gave me a loose smile and leaned back, sinking into the cushions. Within minutes, he was out cold. One shoe off, folder still clutched in his hand. I stood over him for a second, staring down at his face. It was the first time in years he looked younger than me. I pulled the folder from his hand, set it on the table, and grabbed a blanket from the hall closet, tossed it over him without a word. Then I went into the back room, locked the door, and sat down at the terminal. The kill switch dashboard was already open. Color-coded contracts, vendor triggers, debt timers, and freeze orders. I triple-checked every entry. Margaret had her end prepped. The legal filings were already in escrow. At 3:17 a.m. exactly, I uploaded the final contract revocations into a secure database. A red confirmation box blinked once. Then it turned green. That was it. I sat back in the chair, stared at the screen for a second, and exhaled through my nose. Tomorrow, the wedding wouldn't be the main event. It'd just be the backdrop. Later that morning, Kyle was still passed out on my couch, dead to the world. I showered, dressed, and walked out the door in a tailored navy suit I had altered the week before. Crisp lines, French cuffs, silver tie clip. Not flashy, just sharp enough to make them uncomfortable. The country club was buzzing. White tents, live quartet, champagne already being poured like the reception was the Super Bowl. I checked in with the wedding coordinator just inside the ballroom. She scanned her clipboard, barely glancing up. "Ethan Whitmore, right?" she said. "Table 14, that's with staff, per the bride's family's request." I said nothing, just nodded. Table 14 was off to the side, behind a row of serving carts and a giant ficus tree. Linens didn't match. The place cards were handwritten. It was me and 3 off-duty busboys they had asked to fill seats so the room didn't look uneven. One of the kitchen staff tried to hand me a plate. "You eating with us?" he asked, polite. Then he looked at my suit again, actually saw my face, and froze. I didn't say a word, just sat down, forked my napkin once, checked my watch. The ceremony went off like a Hallmark ad. Floral arches, crying bridesmaids, generic vows, forced applause. Kyle looked half hungover. Erica looked like she'd been waiting her whole life to be photographed in lace. Then came the reception. That's when the games really started. Dinner, toasts, and finally, the mic. Erica stood at the head table, glass in hand, spotlight right on her, like she timed it with God. "I just want to say," she began, grinning, "that I'm grateful for everyone here who supported us, especially those who know their place." Polite laughter rolled through the room. She tilted her head, eyes sweeping past me like I wasn't even there. "It's hard," she went on, "starting a new chapter with old baggage in the background. But luckily we've learned how to streamline things." A few louder laughs now. My father chuckled. My mother looked down into her lap. Kyle? He laughed the hardest. I reached into my jacket pocket, pulled out my phone, opened the pre-written message, the same one that had been sitting in my drafts for weeks. "Cancel all contracts." 3 words, 1 press. I hit send. Within 30 seconds, Hartwell Ventures, Erica's father's firm, got their first notification. Logistics contract terminated, then another. Equipment lease revoked. Then, fuel supply frozen. 10 seconds later, IT control access revoked. All accounts went dark. Servers shut down. The room didn't notice at first, but Erica's father did. He was sitting 2 seats over from the head table, scrolling through his phone, frowning hard. Then his face locked, jaw clenched. He stood up mid-salad. "What the hell is this?" he snapped. Everyone went quiet. Erica blinked like someone had cut the lights. Kyle looked up from his plate, confused. "What's wrong?" Erica asked. Her father held up his phone, voice rising. "Your idiot fiancé just lost us $26 million in exposure." Whispers rippled across the ballroom. The photographer stopped mid-shot. The band cut the volume. He turned to Kyle and pointed directly at him. "You told me these contracts were secure." Kyle stood halfway, panicked. They're gone," her father barked. "The vendors just pulled out." "You don't even own your own back end." Erica looked around like someone had pulled a rug out from under her heels. "What does that mean?" she asked. "What's happening?" Her father didn't answer. He grabbed his blazer, turned to the guests, and said, loud and clear, "This investment is dead. I'm pulling out." He didn't wait for a response. He walked out the main doors, shaking his head, phone already to his ear. The room exploded. Chairs scraped. Voices clashed. People were standing, confused, whispering. Someone dropped a wine glass. A server froze mid-pour. Erica screamed, full volume. "What did you do?" Kyle looked at me like I was a stranger, eyes wide, pale, sick. I didn't say a thing. I stood up from table 14, adjusted my cuff, slid my phone back into my jacket, and walked straight toward the head table. I reached the head table before anyone could stop me. The ballroom was chaos. Voices rising, chairs scraping, whispers shooting across the room like sparks. Erica was still screaming. Kyle looked like he'd swallowed ice water, and my parents sat frozen, pretending not to understand what was happening. I stopped right in front of them, lowered my voice, and said, "You gave me nothing." I returned the favor. It landed like a punch. Kyle stumbled toward me, hands shaking. "Ethan, wait, listen, just slow down. We can fix this. We're family. Family." He said it like a lifeline, like a magic word that could undo 5 years of planning and 20 years of being treated like a spare piece of furniture. "You want me to reconsider?" I said. "Fine, let's reconsider every deal I saved." I counted them off on my fingers. The Dover hospital job, you forgot to submit insurance forms. I fixed it. The Ridgewood Commercial Center, you put the wrong date on the contract. I refiled it. The 3-year landscaping partnership you bragged about, I negotiated that. You didn't even know the client's last name. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. Nothing came out. I kept going. Those payroll emergencies, me. The quiet capital injections, me. Every near collapse you took credit for surviving, me. I kept you standing while you played boss. He shook his head slowly. "Ethan, I didn't know. I didn't realize." "That's the problem," I said. "You never cared enough to look." Dad finally stood. He tugged his jacket straight and tried to soften his voice. "Son, you don't do this to your own blood. This is a family business. You're hurting all of us." I stared at him. "You erased me for 20 years. I'm not hurting you. I'm just letting your ledger catch up." He flinched like I'd slapped him. My mother stepped closer, eyes watery, voice trembling. "Ethan, please, stop this. We can talk, we can fix things. Just don't do this in front of everyone." I almost laughed. "In front of everyone? This is the first time you've seen me in years." She reached for my sleeve. I stepped back. Erica lunged forward, makeup streaked, hair unraveling, rage twisting her face. "You're nothing," she hissed. "You're a jealous burnout with a spreadsheet fetish. You think this makes you powerful?" I looked her dead in the eye. "Then losing to me must sting," she screamed, loud enough the DJ flinched as he unplugged his equipment. Someone in the crowd muttered, "What the hell is happening?" Someone else whispered my name like it was a curse. I didn't stay long enough to hear the rest. I turned, walked straight past the cake table and down the side hallway. The staff entrance door was open, a cold breeze drifting in from the loading dock. The DJ was rolling cases out to a van, giving me a nervous nod as I passed. My phone buzzed, then again, and again. 3 notifications at once. Ironwood Logistics, Centrac termination executed, Elmside equipment, account freeze confirmed. Benton Hill Resources, debt recall submitted, another vibration. Raven Point, legal transition documents filed. One by one, everything I'd built in the shadows clicked into place. Every hidden lever, every pressure point, every exit clause. Whitmore Construction wasn't sinking. It was gone. I walked across the loading dock, the pavement still warm from the sun, and stepped into the parking lot while the ballroom lights flickered behind me. My phone glowed again. Vendor network, full shutdown, complete. I didn't smile. I didn't speak. I just kept walking. I didn't look back once as I walked off that property. Didn't turn around. Didn't speak to anyone. Just drove straight to my office and let the noise fall behind me. In the weeks that followed, I went silent. While Whitmore collapsed, I rebuilt, in the open this time. I filed the paperwork, bought a domain, and flipped the switch on the public launch. Ironwood Capital, not a holding company anymore, but a fully integrated firm with operational control, lean logistics, and embedded legal services. Everything Whitmore Construction faked being, Ironwood actually became. I brought in the vendors I'd saved, not as clients, but as partners. Sign them to performance equity deals. No more handshake promises, no backroom favors. I hired 2 of my old contacts, guys from early jobs who'd been screwed over by Kyle or pushed out for being too honest. I gave them real titles, profit shares, and a seat at the table. We worked out of a downtown Newark office. No fake art on the walls, no family portraits. Just sharp lines, clean floors, and a single rule. No one pretends here. Margaret became my board chair. She'd earned it. Smart, brutal when needed, and allergic to bullshit. She called me one afternoon while I was walking out of a client meeting. "He called me," she said. "I didn't ask who. Your father, wants to meet, wants answers." I let that sit. "What did you say?" "I told him to go to hell," she said. Politely, in Latin. I laughed once. "You're classier than I would have been." She paused. "You want to talk to him?" "No," and that was that. 2 days later, I got a voicemail on an old burner line I hadn't used in a year. Kyle's voice quiet. Sounded like he'd rehearsed it a few times. I guess I'm wondering, would you have saved us if we'd treated you right?" I didn't call back. Instead, I sent a one-line email from my Ironwood address. That's the difference between us. I didn't need a response. I didn't expect one. I walked back into the office and joined the project team on a new build-out proposal. Nothing flashy, just clean work, real results, and no fake speeches. Ironwood was exactly what I wanted Whitmore to be when I was younger, before they shoved me to the side. 1 year to the day, I sat in my new office, top floor, glass windows all around, quiet, but never still. My name was etched in metal on the wall behind me. Ethan Whitmore, CEO, Ironwood Capital. The screen on my desk refreshed. Breaking, Ironwood acquires assets of defunct. Whitmore Construction at auction. I leaned back in my chair, eyes on the headline. No bidding war, no resistance. Just pennies on the dollar. They'd gutted the name trying to look powerful. I bought the pieces just to make sure no one else picked up the scraps. My phone buzzed with the day's staffing report. One entry stood out. A resume flagged by HR. Applicant, Allison Green, Erica's bridesmaid, the one who laughed when I was holding the reception layout on my knees. Applied for an admin position. I closed the tab. We didn't call her back. An hour later, a new intern, fresh out of college, nervous but bright, knocked on my door during a tour. He looked around, wide-eyed. "Can I ask something?" I nodded. "What's the story behind Ironwood?" I gave him a short smile. "Long road, worth it." He smiled back, not pushing, and left with the group. That night, I drove out to a small diner on the edge of the highway, the kind with cracked booths and burnt coffee. Margaret was already there, same corner seat, 2 mugs waiting. "Big day," she said, sliding one toward me. "Quiet one," I said back, and took a sip. The TV over the counter was playing a segment from the local news. Stock footage of Whitmore Construction's old headquarters, followed by shaky video from the wedding day. Erica yelling, Kyle pale, guests walking out. A voiceover ran through the fall. Mismanagement, lawsuits, debt recalls. "Another American dynasty down the drain," the anchor said. Margaret shook her head, grinning. "Revenge looks good on you." I looked out the window, streetlights bouncing off rain-slick asphalt. "Call it balance," I said. We left cash on the table and walked out into the night. The air was cold, sharp, but clean.